Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. We are ready to do another episode in the Culture Club series. Now, for those of you who might just be tuning in for the very first time, this is like, what, our fifth episode on this, Nate? And this was, it's fifth episode. And this was born out of the Founders Forum live event that we did in Brooklyn back at the beginning of April. Nate gave an awesome presentation to all these owners that own these massive schools who came to learn from us on team and hiring and marketing and these sorts of things. And Nate gave such a good presentation on culture, and it is such a open question for so many people who are in our industry that I was like, we need to do a series on this. Now, before we actually jump in, Nate, before we actually jump into today's topic, we are talking about the Founders Forum. So before we dive in, I just want to say we are currently pre-enrolling for the next round of the Founders Forum, which starts this fall, October 1st to be exact. If you've been listening to the podcast for a while and feel like you're getting a lot from these episodes, here's what I will tell you. What we do in the forum goes way deeper than what we do on this podcast. I've heard again and again from people who hop on a call with me or send me an email. They say, hey, I can't believe how much you guys give away for free on the pod. And they're right. We do not hold back. But even still, if you think this podcast has been valuable, you really have no idea how transformative it is to spend a full year working closely with us and with other owners inside the forum. The forum isn't a course. It's not content. It's not theory. The forum is a done-with-you experience where we help you build actual systems, clarify your leadership, and create a business that can scale to 7 figures and beyond without burning out. So we're giving early bird pricing right now to those who enroll before July 1st. And I want to be super clear about this. Many of our members are renewing and coming back for a second or even third year. And it's because they're still growing. They're still implementing. And the forum is helping them do it with support, focus, and community. So if you're tired of figuring everything out on your own, if you want to stop reinventing the wheel and start building the kind of business that doesn't depend entirely on you, this is the place to do it. The new cohort, as I said, begins October 1st. We'll be sending out announcements about early bird pricing soon. The best way to get it is to get on the email list. So go to growyourmusicstudio.com/forum to join the wait list, and you'll find the details there. All right, on to the episode, Nate.
Love it.
Culture Club. Yeah, Culture Club. And today we're talking about employee ownership. And when you brought this slide up at the forum event in April, the first thing I thought was, what is this? Employee ownership, like owning the company? Is this like from each according to his ability to each according to his needs? Is Nate advocating the rise of the proletariat to throw off like, what do you mean by employee ownership? And then once you actually started defining it, I was like, oh, okay, I get what he's getting at here. So Nate, let me stop making jokes. Can you define employee ownership for us?
Well, it is funny that you bring that up, though, because remember my culture example of the nut butter that I use?
Yes,
Never again. And that was an employee-owned company.
I know.
Never again. So maybe I am meaning that. Anyways, it could mean that depending on what your mission
depending
is.
On what your culture is, yes.
Totally. No, but what I mean by employee ownership, and how about why don't we define it simply, which is that when you're building a culture, you're coming from those, as you said, inward facing, those internal core values. And then you have this external facing, this purpose, clear purpose statement that you're sharing, right? And when we talk about employee ownership, we want them to feel like they not only can embrace those values and that purpose, but they feel like they're integral to creating the how you're actually developing the culture of the music school, how you're actually going to follow through on that purpose, how you're going to do the simple things like run a recital, or in our case, a songwriting party, or what is the in-classroom experience going to actually look and feel like. And I don't mean by employee ownership that they are defining all of the what, every last detail. Like, they don't have to define exactly what the curriculum is, but they do have to have a sense of collaborative design and what the experience is going to be when a family walks into that music school. And this, by the way, Daniel, of our 7-part Culture Club series, I believe that this episode right here is the one that is potentially the most elusive for music school owners. This
Why is
idea
that?
that I think it's because when we first start our school, we oftentimes feel like, we're the only one who can actually follow through on this purpose. But let's be frank, usually it's because we haven't even figured out how to share clearly what the purpose is of our music school. We just know that we love to do something within a classroom, and we feel it's transformative for the students. So we feel like we have a sort of savior complex. Like, well, we're the one person who can deliver on promise. That's one reason why employee ownership is so elusive. And another is, and we've talked about this a bunch in previous episodes, but we sort of mishire in the beginning of the development of a multi-teacher school. We oftentimes hire our friends, and we hire the wrong people for the wrong seats on the bus. You talked a lot about how culture is so important to getting the right people in the right seat. And so that's the other reason, is we mishire, and we find people that aren't a great values or purpose fit for various reasons. And then we sort of lose faith. We're just like, I feel like all teachers want to do is come make a buck, work as little as possible. And then, they're all mercenaries. We get that sense. And I bet you some listeners right now are feeling that. So I think that's why it's so elusive, this idea of employee ownership. But I think it's essential, which is why it's part of this series.
Nate, let me jump in here because I want to ask a question. You did such a great job of connecting this to the previous episodes, which I recommend everyone go back and listen to them at least 3 times. We have internal values, we have external facing purpose. And now what we're inviting team members to do is to define the how and the what of how that is lived out. The team gets to influence how things go in the school overall, maybe within the department, with how this program runs, things like that. But what I hear all the time from owners is that they're complaining that they invite this kind of participation, and then they hear crickets. I dropped this in the Slack channel. Nobody responded. I sent out an email. It's been 2 weeks. Only one staff member has replied. Okay? How do you inspire this kind of ownership? How do you inspire this kind of participation from the team? I have to know. They need to know it. Everybody listening on the pod and watching on YouTube wants to know, Nate.
So I'm going to say this. One of our core values is communicate consistently to gain trust. So here's the deal. You have to ask yourself as an owner, are you really, truly ready for input? And you have to sort of have dramatic pause after that. It is very normal for an entrepreneur that's starting their school in the beginning to be essentially known as a fixer. They basically want to be the person who builds every facet of their school. Sometimes it's because they're the only person. So they're like, I can't imagine that anyone else would actually want to be interested. But what happens is that in those early years, you get so accustomed to be the one person who's willing to put in those extra hours, burn the candle, late into the evening, and try to solve everything. Then when you actually start building team, you start hiring those first 3 to 5 teachers, and you try to develop an organization around something greater than just you and your studio experience. You're not actually yet in practice of asking for input, which is a really fascinating thing to contemplate when you're listening to this. Like when we practice asking, listening, and then the most important last part is receiving help. There's a reason why it's a practice, right? Nobody's like, how often have you had a friend or your partner be like, I just need you to listen, right? And so oftentimes we're just like, we're launching into like, no, I got ideas of how to fix this. And So there is a practice of saying to your teachers, here is our purpose. And Daniel, you used this term in the last pod, so I'm going to say it again because I love it. Your job is a chief reminding officer. You're reminding your teachers of the purpose, and you're saying, I want you to help develop exactly how the in-classroom experience is going to look and feel like, so we realize this purpose. I want your ideas on how to produce an amazing recital. And here's the key. Here's the key right here. That is different than the way I currently do it. Right? So there's two key principles around beginning to get more engagement from your teachers and your staff. Number one, the principle in my experience has been you actually have to want to welcome new ideas and test out those ideas, whether they're great ideas or not so great ideas. So you
Okay.
ask for help. You have to take it. Principle number two is that you then have to implement those ideas, and they need to know that they're being heard and that their ideas are welcome. Again, you still have to be the CRO, as you put it so well. You always have to remind people that there's a very clear purpose. Like at BMF, we are a songwriting program. So oftentimes people will come in and be like, we want to lead a adult rock and roll cover choir. And you're like, well, okay, but I'm not sure that's exactly the right solution. Like, can we stay focused on how can we lead an original songwriting adult choir? Like, what ideas do you have around that? Right. So that's just an example. But so I'm going to stop there, and then I'm going to give you some concrete examples of how we do it at BMF. But I want to just start with those fundamental principles.
Yes. Okay. I have a few follow-ups here. The first
Yep.
is way back on episode 54, we did our very first live Q&A episode, and the very first question I'm pretty sure we asked was from a school owner who complained of this exact problem of wanting
Yep.
input from staff, and she couldn't get it. And the title of that episode, we actually titled the whole episode, even though we answered many questions, is Nagging Teachers Part of Your Job? That was the title of that episode. We'll drop
It
that in the
is a
show
little
notes.
bit.
Yeah. So, Nate, I just want to press the point a little bit more.
Okay.
Because what it's sounding like, because I can feel the collective objection from the audience, which is, but I am nagging the teachers, and I'm still not getting the help. And I'm just curious, if you heard someone say that to you, how would you reply to that? Because your principles are good, obviously.
Yeah.
But I do know of teams where it is like pulling teeth, or there's no sense of culture amongst the team, no sense of teamwork.
One of the most radical things we did to start out the Founders Forum, which begins with, well, actually, we're in the next year's curriculum, which we're developing now, we're starting with a great month just on delegation and learning how to develop team to work systems. But right after that, we go into developing our annual planning workbook so that we can go into annual planning. And one of the key components of it, which is quite radical for most of the founders in the program, is we survey all of our teachers and we survey all of our staff, and we ask them what needs to change at our school. What are we doing well? What are we not doing well? And what was fascinating about that, Daniel, remember, we had a lot of people saying, like, I'm a little nervous to actually ask. I'm a little nervous to get the feedback. What do I do with the feedback? Right? Okay, so how do we actually move from nagging to a system of consistent communication and collaboration? That's basically what you're asking. Like, it sucks to be a nag.
Right.
It's sort of like when the J team at home is like, can you put your dish in the sink? Yeah. She doesn't want to ask me. She just wants a system and agreement that we're always going to put our dish in the sink at the same time every day. It's by the time the next morning rolls around, there won't be dishes in the sink. Okay, so we don't want to be a nag. We just want to have a system for consistently reaching out to our teachers, asking them for feedback, and then coming back to them with what we've heard and what we intend to do about it.
Yes. And I feel like I'm hearing in the subtext here, in how you chose to answer that question, I'm going to even add on, is
Love
that
it.
A lot of times the reason why there's spotty communication is because no accountability has been built in to overall. There are no systems around it. There's maybe a little bit of a Wild West feel where it's just like every man for himself or every woman for himself herself. Um, and that there needs to be rhythms and expectations even as early as the hiring process, where you're setting expectations of this is how things operate around here. And so when a teacher hears us say, or a school owner hears us say, oh, you need to do this, and they're like, yes, this is what's going to change the school this year, and then they go, they're off on the mission, and then they start sending out emails to the staff, and you've got a staff member who's been there for 4 years, and it's like, what's this about? I never hear from her. What's this about? I
Yes.
never hear from him. And all of a sudden,
Yes.
the owner's wanting to change the course of the ship, but the bigger the ship, the bigger the rudder you need to change, and the longer it takes to change, the longer it takes to change direction. And I mean, I'll even go back to an example you gave very early on the podcast, probably first 20 episodes. And I can't remember the
Mm.
exact number, but you talked about when you actually introduced the team communication tool Slack. When you introduced Slack to
Right.
BMF, you
Yep.
literally were warning people for months in advance that this was now going to be the new standard, no longer email. You were warning that after such and such date, this will be the expectation. You did multiple trainings on it, which
Yep.
I think blew people's minds. Of course, it made sense to me, but the audience was like, wait, what?
You have to train. Can't they just go to the help page?
Exactly. But yes, because the training, a perfect example, Nate. The training wasn't just about how to use the tool. It
No.
was how to use it in the tool, how to use the tool in the context of our business and what the
Mhm.
channels are going to be and what the expectations are going to be in the channels and how this will be done and this will be done. And you did it over and over and over again. You were the chief reminding officer.
Yes.
So I think we put this to bed, and I think we can get back. I've kind of hijacked the episode here just a tiny bit, but I feel like that was the giant elephant in the room that needed to be addressed. And now we can actually get into how to get the feedback from the team, how to get the
Yeah.
ownership from the team, and how
Yeah.
to build that culture piece. This episode is sponsored by GroupLessons.com. If you're looking for a group piano method that is easy to implement in your studio or school, look no farther than Piano Express from GroupLessons.com. Because unlike most group piano methods, Piano Express allows students to make individual progress within the context of a larger group. And because of the at-home practice tools and gamified curriculum, students using the Piano Express method make faster progress than the average method book student. And that helps students feel excited, accomplished, and motivated to learn new music. Also, the system is really adaptable. We've got teachers using the system in their home studios, and we have many large commercial studios running our 3-room model that allows you to see up to 24 students per hour with just 2 teachers. So if you'd like to learn more about Piano Express, navigate to grouplessons.com and sign up for a free demo. You'll get to look at the method, our app and teacher guides, and we'll even give you a sneak peek of our implementation plan that has helped hundreds of studios start their group program in just a few weeks.
Yeah. So let's just do some really practical examples, because
Sure.
you
And I have a
got
few
to
too.
have at least 2 or 3 action items that you can leave the
Yeah.
pod with. Otherwise, it's just infotainment, and we have plenty of that already. So the first is come up with some system like quarterly where you're going to survey your faculty for very specific reasons. For example, we're about to survey our faculty about adding some extra teaching hours over the summer when we're not writing our songwriting camp. So that is just a mundane survey, but baked into that survey can be some other inquisitive questions that you want to get them to respond to. So come up with some sort of, it's a great idea to be like survey your team 4 times a year. Okay. There's good action item number 1. And when you're surveying your team 4 times a year, you're like, but Nate, what do I survey them on? Well, make it really easy. Have like one survey be seasonally about how to improve recitals. Make it the next survey to be seasonally about are you happy at work? And we go into an entire template in the forum, but you can use some basic questions like, do you know what's expected of you at the school? Do you have the tools to succeed? What is your most enjoyable part of the being a member of this teaching community? And what is the biggest challenge for you? What's the most frustrating thing? Right? So come up with a simple survey that's just all about satisfaction. You could do that in the spring as you're leading into the summer and the fall. It's always a great, spring is a great time to do that kind of thing because everybody's feeling optimistic as the flowers are blooming. So, anyways, think about a concrete system of surveys. Second of all, whenever you have a sort of a new idea. Let's say you said you sent out a survey on improving recitals. You took all that information, you threw it into ChatGPT. You said, summarize three essential ways that we can improve our recitals based on all the responses. And it says, it gives you three concrete ideas, like they need to run more on time. There should be fewer students in each recital and something else. Then what you do is you find at least one or two of your most engaged, hopefully veteran teachers at the school, and you try to enroll them into a project. That's the key. Remember what I said? You ask for help, you receive the help, and then you show them that you're listening and you implement the help. It's not enough for you to stay in the role of fixer. You have to move into the role of engager. Getting employee ownership is what this is all about. So get those teachers, one or two teachers, to be like, hey, would you like to be on a recital, upgrading, leveling up recital project with me for the next 2 months? We're going to meet every Monday for 30 minutes, and we're going to figure out how to implement these three things. And I would love your ideas and help in getting it done. Which brings me to number 3, Daniel. Number 3 is that if you want more of your team to be engaged, then you need to find 2 or 3 key members of the team that can begin to be the messengers around asking for feedback, getting engagement, right? So if it's always you asking, then it becomes noise to everybody. This is the key. If it's Nate slacking all the team all the time, then they don't know which slack from Nate actually matters. Let me say that again. If you're messaging them all the time and you're the only messenger, then they don't prioritize your message over, they don't know which message to prioritize that you've sent, rather. So the last key component of getting employee ownership is finding those first 2 or 3 team members that will actually become messengers as well for the school. So it can be very simple. It can be just like you've created this recital project. You've got your veteran piano teacher and your veteran violin teacher who's now psyched to help you improve recitals. You're paying them for the time. You're saying, hey, I'll pay you for 2 extra hours a week to help me level this up over the next 2 months as we move to recitals. And then this is the key component, is that they are the one actually slacking the team to help ask for more ideas on what here are 3 ways that we think we can reduce the number of people per recital. What do you think? And they're the ones messaging, not you. Once you start finding those 3 to 5 people that are going to become messengers on behalf of the culture, the community as a whole, you're going to start to see more and more teachers engage. Daniel, you said one thing, though, I need to rewind tape back to. I know you were like, we got to get more specific. I was just specific there, but I want to say this. We all know what it looks and feels like to be the idea guy. Hey, I got an idea. We should do this. I got an idea. What do you think about this? I got an idea. What do you think about that? When we're constantly, if that sounds familiar to you, and you're just like, hey, I was thinking, like maybe we need fewer people in recitals, and you just quickly shoot that off to your one other person on the team that's interested. If you're always sending ideas out there, you're kind of in trouble because you're acting like a young entrepreneur that's just an idea guy, right? You just constantly have ideas and nobody knows what to act on, and you never follow through on much. people just think, oh, this is just another idea of Daniel's or Nate's, They're like, oh, Nate's got another idea. He'll never do anything with it. He's always just got lots of ideas. And that is the last thing I'm going to say. You want to mature out of that phase in your music school and mature into a phase of engaging 2 or 3 other people and picking only the handful of projects that truly matter, and then get people engaged on them, and otherwise just keep celebrating everybody's efforts in delivering on promise. So be careful if you're the idea guy.
Yes. Nate, I love the practicality of those examples. And I'm not going to follow that up with just more examples that are that granular in that practicality. What I want to do, maybe to close out the episode, is connect this back to the bigger idea and the culture you're setting overall. And if you've been following all the homework assignments and everything up to this point, you're pretty far down this road already. But let's talk about creating a culture where employees feel valued at the highest levels. We have talked often on this podcast about the importance of annual planning. This is where you get employee feedback from the top dog on the org chart all the way down to the newest team member has the opportunity to contribute to the direction that you are going. And I will tell you that even in our organization, back when Bethany was brand new, there was an observation she made in the very first annual planning process that she made that both Kirsten and I were like, whoa. And it literally changed the direction of one of our annual objectives because of something that Bethany, who later told me that she felt very insecure is too strong a word, but she felt like she didn't have a place in that meeting. She liked that she was there. We were glad that we invited her. She was glad, but she also later revealed to me that she felt, oh, can I even contribute something here? But we kept encouraging her in that first process that she was involved in. And she said something that blew Kirsten and I's mind. That is how you set the direction of your school within those guidelines that we talked about, within the guidelines of your core values, within the guidelines of the clear school purpose. That's how you get that feedback. And then you get it again when you do quarterly planning and you get the feedback from the team who are there contributing how things are going in their area of responsibility. How are things going? And then they can contribute and make those course corrections throughout the year. Okay. Here's one other big picture thought I would give to people as we close the episode out. And it's something I've referenced before in the past. We'll probably reference it again in the future. I talk about it in the forum. I go much deeper into this in the forum, but I want to share my screen very briefly and show what I call the 5 levels of competence. The 5 levels that a team member could be at. All the way from level 1, where it is I tell you exactly what to do and you do it. There is no judgment required. It's like, hey, call this number, order these 18 books. Tell me when it's done. All the way up to level 5, which was which was recently demonstrated by Bethany in the context of grouplessons.com, where I told her a problem we had in the company. She literally came up with the strategy to solve the problem. It was within the bounds of the annual plan. And the way that she decided to solve the problem was completely her idea. And she came to me. She told me what the strategy was going to be. She told me the resources she needed. She told me the time and the budget needed. And then she went and did it. Yeah. And now it's working. And it's positively impacting all of our licensees who are licensing Piano Express from grouplessons.com. Okay. So here's the 5 levels of competence. And obviously I've got this on screen. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can read it. I'm not going to read out loud. Honestly, podcast listeners, just go to YouTube and watch this. We're, roughly around 25 to 28 minutes into this episode. Here's the point. Going back to your ideas man thing, Nate, is that you don't ask a level 1 employee to make a major decision that's going to impact the future of your school. And if you've got a level 1 or level 2 who's an ideas man just constantly throwing bad ideas out, this is a category that you can use to understand why you're rejecting their idea and why you're rejecting it without guilt. At the same time, if you have an awareness of these levels, you can begin to, in your own mind, think about the kinds of input you do want from people and the kinds of direction you want, because they are more closely connected to you fulfilling your school's purpose and objective and values. Because a level 5 employee, you're going to take their advice much more seriously. And if you have this framework in your head, you can even begin to categorize your own team members in your head so that you can begin to assess where you want input, and you can assess the appropriate channels and mediums for receiving that input.